But back then, I felt that was like a little betrayal for me. That's how I felt, honestly. I was like, how is she with these dudes? And, you know, Pac died, you know, hating these individuals or disliking them and beefing with them. He wanted to marry you.
Yeah, that's weird, man. You don't find that weird, yo, that 2Pac's fiance was there, like her knowing how 2Pac felt about Puffy and Biggie, and she was at that vibe party, man?
She invited them, bruh. If I would have had that information right there, that would have helped me keep Big from going to that month, because I was trying to keep Big from going there.
This is the vibe party Gene Deal is referring to. As you can see, Diddy is having a good time, dancing, smiling, fully in his element at a party organized by Quincy Jones. And just moments later, we get this snapshot in time. Diddy seated at the center of the action, flanked by the notorious B.I.G. on his right and producer Stevie J on his left. And if you look closely on the far right, the woman partially cut off from the frame is believed to be Quincy Jones, daughter of Quincy Jones and the woman 2Pac was engaged to marry before his untimely death. And that raised eyebrows, because just 6 months after sitting at 2Pac's hospital bedside, speaking about love and loyalty, she was here hosting a party for Vibe magazine, personally sending invites to the same dudes Pac was ready to go to war with. It didn't feel accidental. Her name was directly connected to the party.
We were going to a party that she was giving. She did that whole thing for the vibe. I come to find out that years later, her and Chris Lattimore from In the Streets, they did that.
While people were still blaming Bad Boy for Pac's murder, she helped bring Puff and Big into the same room months after Pac's funeral. Nobody understood how that made sense. And then there was the tattoo. Pac's name was on her body while he was alive, covered up shortly after he was gone. No tribute, no story, just gone.
She covered up her Pac tattoo, right?
I heard that too, yeah. Maybe she got a real man, a new husband with kids, and he probably don't want to see his wife walking around with another man on her body.
That tattoo situation told the real story. You don't cover up something that meaningful unless you already let it go. And if you let it go that fast, maybe you were never really holding on to begin with. And then there was how she acted in the hospital. Pac was laying in that bed fighting to stay alive, and the people around him saw her behavior for what it really was. The energy wasn't right, not from someone claiming to be that close.
And you're pissed because a female shows up at the hospital, you're rolling your eyes with an entitled attitude. You should be more concerned about your man laying in the hospital bed.
That's the part that never sat right with Pac's people. She had access, she had control, but the way she moved after the shooting didn't match the picture she wanted the world to believe. Let's take it back to when it all started. See, Quincy wasn't just some random woman who fell for Pac. She was Quincy Jones's daughter, one of the most powerful executives in entertainment history. She moved in circles that Pac spent his whole career fighting against. The same industry machine that tried to control him, package him, make him more acceptable to mainstream America. Their whole relationship started weird too. Back in 1993, Pac had publicly called out Quincy Jones in an interview, saying he only dated white women and was turning his daughters into cultural outsiders.
He said all this kind of not very nice stuff about my dad and mixed families and mixed kids and how it's messing up America.
That comment infuriated the Jones family. But then, in 1996, when 2Pac and Quincy finally met at a nightclub, something shifted. He apologized, she forgave, and suddenly, they were inseparable.
I was at a club one night in New York, and he thought I was Rashida, 2Pac did, and he came up to me and he was apologizing about the article that he wrote about my parents. And inside I'm just like, oh my God, he is so cute.
Right when Pac was at his most dangerous, calling out the industry, exposing corruption, getting too real for comfort, here comes this woman from the very system he was fighting. And suddenly Pac starts talking about marriage, about settling down, about moving in a different direction. The militant street poet was becoming more polished, more marketable. Coincidence? His crew didn't think so. But the real test came that September night in Vegas. September 7th, 1996. Pac was scheduled to attend the Mike Tyson fight at MGM Grand, and Quincy was with him. According to her own words later, she had a horrible feeling about the trip. She told her father, We shouldn't have gone to Vegas. I had a horrible feeling about it. She knew something was off. She felt the danger brewing. But here's what doesn't make sense. If you really love somebody, if you genuinely feel something's wrong, you don't just go along for the ride. You speak up. You pull them back. You make noise. You fight for them. But she didn't do any of that. Instead, she watched the whole thing unfold. She was there when Pac and his crew got into it with Orlando Anderson in the MGM lobby after the fight. She saw the tension escalate. She felt the energy shift from celebration to something darker. And when Pac decided to get in that BMW with Suge Knight, heading to Club 662, rolling through enemy territory while emotions were running high, where was his supposed fiancée? She stayed behind, back in the hotel room, safe. Now think about that for a second. Your man is heated, rolling into a situation you already feel is dangerous, and you just let him go? You don't insist on coming with him? You don't try to talk him down? You just watch him walk into what you think might be a trap? That BMW pulled up to a red light on Flamingo Road around 11:15 p.m. A white Cadillac rolled up alongside them, and someone inside opened fire. Multiple shots rang out. Pac took 4 bullets, 2 in the chest, 1 in the arm, 1 in the thigh. Suge got grazed in the head but kept driving, blood streaming down his face, rushing to get help. They ended up at University Medical Center, and that's when Kidada reappeared. She wasn't in the car when the shots were fired, but she was suddenly front and center when the cameras started rolling. For 6 days, Pac fought for his life in that hospital. And for 6 days, Kidada was right there, but not how you'd expect someone truly in love to be. Multiple people who visited described her behavior as cold, controlling, almost territorial. She wasn't the broken fiancée you'd imagine. She was managing the situation. When other women from Pac's past came to say goodbye, women who'd been there before the fame, before the money, before any of this industry stuff, Kidada was rolling her eyes, blocking access, acting like she owned the man.
And you're pissed because a female shows up at the hospital, you're rolling your eyes with a fucking entitled attitude. You should be more concerned about your man laying in the hospital bed.
One visitor described it perfectly. She was acting like it was a competition, like we weren't supposed to be there, like she owned him. That's not how real love moves when someone's dying. When your person is fighting for their life, you don't care who shows up as long as they genuinely care about them. You welcome everyone who wants to send love and prayers. But Kidada was gatekeeping, controlling who got close and who didn't. She was protecting her position in a story that was still being written. According to reports, she was the one who leaned over his body and whispered, "Do you know I love you? Do you know we all love you?" Pac reportedly nodded before slipping into a coma. Beautiful moment, right? Except people who were there said something felt off about the whole performance. Like she was playing a role for an audience that included nurses, doctors, and eventually, the media. On September 13th, 1996, at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. The official cause was respiratory failure and cardiac arrest related to his gunshot wounds. And just like that, the most influential rapper of his generation was gone. Now here's where the story gets really strange. You'd expect Kidada to be devastated. You'd expect press statements, tearful interviews, public grief. You'd expect her to be fighting for justice, working with his mother, protecting his legacy. Instead, she just disappeared. No interviews, no public appearances, no statements about their relationship or his death. She faded back into the fashion world like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Afeni Shakur, Pac's mother, was left to battle the estate issues alone. His crew was dealing with the emotional weight, the media scrutiny, the street politics that came with his death. His real friends were grieving publicly while trying to keep his message alive. And where was his supposed fiancée? Nowhere to be found. But that silence didn't last forever, because 6 months later, on March 9th, 1997, Kidada Jones was back in the spotlight. And this time, she was planning a party. Not just any party, a Vibe magazine after party in Los Angeles. the same night as the Soul Train Awards, the same night Biggie Smalls would be murdered. And this wasn't just some random industry event she happened to attend. Multiple sources, including insiders like Gene Deal, later confirmed that Kidada helped organize the whole thing.
We were going to a party that she was giving. She did that whole thing for the vibe. I come to find out that years later, her and Chris Lattimore from In the Streets, they did that.
Think about that timeline. 6 months earlier, she was sitting beside Pac's hospital bed, whispering about love and loyalty as he lay dying. Now she was personally sending invites to the same people Pac believed were behind his shooting. Puffy was on that guest list. Biggie was on that guest list. The entire bad boy crew that Pac had been beefing with was walking through doors that she helped open.
Yeah, that's weird, man. You don't find that weird, yo, that 2Pac's fiance was there, like her knowing how 2Pac felt about Puffy and Biggie, and she was at that vibe party, man?
She invited them, bruh.
This wasn't just awkward, it was dangerous, because the streets hadn't forgotten. The war between East Coast and West Coast wasn't over just because Pac was dead. If anything, tensions were higher. Suge Knight was still running death row. The Outlaws were still loyal to Pac's memory, and everybody knew that Bad Boy was still being blamed for what happened in Vegas. So when word got out that Kidada Jones, 2Pac's supposed fiancée, was hosting an event with Puffy and Biggie, people started asking questions.
I was like, how is she with these dudes? And, Pac died, hating these individuals or disliking them and beefing with them. He wanted to marry you.
What message was that sending? Whose side was she really on? Biggie himself was reportedly hesitant to attend. He was supposed to fly to London for press and performances. His team had safer options lined up, but at the last minute, plans changed. Puffy allegedly insisted they stay and attend the Vibe event. That decision cost Big his life. The party went off without any incidents inside. Cameras flashed, drinks flowed, industry people networked like always. But when Biggie left that event around 12:30 a.m., heading to another after-party, everything changed. His SUV stopped at a red light in front of the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. A black Chevy Impala pulled up beside them, and a shooter fired multiple rounds through the passenger side door. Biggie was hit 4 times and pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center an hour later. In the chaos that followed, conspiracy theories exploded. Was it retaliation for Pac? Was it a coordinated hit? Was someone inside the party tipped off about Biggie's route? And when people started looking at the guest list, at the organizers, at who knew what when, one name kept coming up. Kidada Jones. The same woman connected to 2Pac's final days was now tied to Biggie's last night. Gene Deal later said that if he'd known about Kidada's involvement in planning that party, he never would have let Big attend. Because to him, that connection changed everything. It wasn't coincidence anymore. It was a pattern.
If I would have had that information right there, that would have helped me keep Big from going to that month. Because I was trying to keep Big from going there.
And through all of this, through the questions, the theories, the investigations, Kidada said nothing. No explanation for why she was working with Bad Boy 6 months after Pac's death. No acknowledgement of how that might look to his fans, his family, his crew. No recognition that she just hosted Pac's enemies on the same night another rapper got murdered. She just faded back into her comfortable world like none of it ever happened. But people noticed. Pac's former crew started speaking up in interviews, calling her behavior suspicious. They pointed out that she'd entered his life right when he was becoming too dangerous for the industry to control, that her presence coincided with his softening toward the same system he'd spent years fighting, that she'd slipped out just as quickly as she'd arrived, leaving everyone else to deal with the aftermath. The final blow came when people noticed what happened to that tattoo. Kidada had gotten Pac's name inked on her body, supposedly a permanent tribute to permanent love. Fans saw it as proof that their connection was real, that even in death, she'd carry a part of him forever. But not long after the cameras disappeared and the public attention moved on, so did the ink. Without warning, without explanation, without a single word to the millions of people who had believed in their story, she covered it up. Not for a movie role, not for any public reason anyone could identify. She just quietly erased him from her skin like he never existed. Like those months together meant nothing. Like the hospital vigil was just for show.
She covered up her Pac tattoo, right?
I heard that too, yeah.
You don't remove someone's name from your body unless you're trying to forget them. You don't erase the symbol of your love if you're still carrying it in your heart. And you definitely don't do it in complete silence if that love was ever genuine. Her defenders tried to justify it. They said she moved on, got married, had a family. They said her new husband probably didn't want to see 2Pac's name on her arm. But those excuses only made it worse because they missed the point entirely. Nobody expected her to stay frozen in time. But if you really loved someone, if they really meant what you claimed they meant, you don't just erase them without acknowledgement. You can move forward and still honor the truth of what you shared.
Well, maybe she got a real man, a new husband with kids, and he probably don't want to see his wife walking around with another man on her body.
Instead, Kidada chose complete erasure, complete silence, complete distance from everything connected to 2Pac Shakur, except when it served her purposes. And that's when people stopped wondering and started knowing. Because when you put it all together, the timing of their relationship, her behavior in Vegas, the hospital control, the party planning, the tattoo removal, the years of silence, it doesn't look like the actions of someone who lost the love of their life. It looks like the actions of someone who was playing a role and couldn't wait for it to be over. See, here's what people figured out when they really examined the timeline. Kidada represented something bigger than just a girlfriend or fiancée. She was Quincy Jones's daughter, connected to the most powerful circles in entertainment. She moved in the same elite Hollywood world that Pac had spent his career criticizing and exposing. When artists become too dangerous, too independent, too willing to speak truth to power, the industry has ways of handling them. Sometimes it's through contracts and legal pressure. Sometimes it's through media manipulation and character assassination. And sometimes it's through people on the inside, people whose job is to get close, to influence, to be there when it matters and control the narrative afterward. That's why everybody thinks 2P's fiancé is behind 2P's death. Not because she personally pulled any triggers or planned any hits, but because every single thing she did, from the moment she entered his life to the moment she erased his name from her skin, served the same purpose: to manage 2Pac Shakur's story and make sure his revolution died with him. She was close enough to matter but distant enough to survive. She loved him just enough to control him, but not enough to save him. And when it was all over, she disappeared back into her world, while his real friends and family were left to fight for his legacy. 30 years later, while Pac's enemies have rebuilt their empires and his message has been watered down and commercialized, Kidada Jones lives quietly, having successfully completed the most important role of her life. And that's the truth they don't want you to understand about how this industry really works. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.